America stands up to bullies. We stand up for freedom.
All eyes are going to be on the president to see how exactly he addresses this crisis during the speech.
This has become a protracted conflict that has drawn in more and more the Russian military and could potentially pose a domestic economic cost as sanctions clamp down on Russia and impact American supply chains and energy prices. And so there's going to be a lot riding on what Biden is able to say here about reassuring the American public about what he's doing and projecting American strength and unity about the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
At least going back over a decade, these sort of partisan theatrics have been a part of the State of the Union. I mean, remember over a decade when a Republican Congressman, Joe Wilson, stood up and told then President Obama, or even during the Trump years when Speaker Pelosi tore up her copy of his speech. Partisan politics are still very much a real thing, even in something that is ostensibly the president's show. A partisan response to the State of the Union is pretty standard, and usually a rising star within the party is picked to deliver a rebuttal to the sitting president. This year it'll be Kim Reynolds, the governor of Iowa. Congresswoman Tlaib doing a progressive response to the president's address is, of course, something much more rare, because this could potentially involve the criticism of other Democrats. This will be kind of a fly in the ointment in a lot of ways, especially since there is so much anger over what happened with Build Back Better. There's this sense of betrayal that the president had made a promise and that was broken, and now you're going into the State of the Union without a Build Back Better, without immigration reform, without a lot of these major policy priorities that Democrats had promised. There are some threats of larger protests around the State of the Union. There have been some groups that have said they wanted to bring convoys of truckers into Washington, D.C. around the State of the Union, modeled after the protests in Ottawa, the capital of Canada. D.C. police reportedly have had a lot of their time off canceled during this period to free up officers for extra patrol duty. And of course, security will be very tight, as always, around these kinds of events. Some Democrats have been pushing him to take a slightly different tack on the pandemic during this speech, shifting from what's kind of been a constant state of emergency to moving to a place where now that testing and vaccines and other mitigation tools are available, to live with the pandemic in some ways. The one thing that he won't be able to talk about in many ways is something that Democrats had hoped he would have by now, which is Build Back Better legislation. As we all know, that hasn't happened yet. This is something that Biden will go to the Capitol empty-handed with. The State of the Union in many ways is an aspirational blueprint for the president, right? But there is something to the pomp and circumstance and the sheer power of the presidential bully pulpit, right? Of the president getting up in the House chamber and laying out his or her vision to members of Congress and, of course, broadly to the American public. There's really something to be said for that, especially for a president like Biden, who, while he answers many reporters' questions, he does have a somewhat more limited speaking schedule than previous presidents. The White House is very likely looking for some sort of reset, a way to turn the page here. Then this steady drumbeat of bad headlines in recent weeks with rising inflation, increasing gas prices, the stalling out of the domestic agenda. If there's any place to stage a reset, the State of the Union would be it.